Great. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start tonight's meeting. This is the City Council Committee on Finance. It is the 19th of May, Tuesday, 2020. I'm going to call this meeting to order and roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Igliozzi.
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilwoman Castillo. Councilwoman Castillo is absent. Councilwoman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor. Councilman Taylor is absent. You have 3 present and 2 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record reflect that the City Solicitor Kenny Cheverini is present, the Chief of Staff is present, the Treasurer is present, Internal Auditor is present, I see. Internal Auditor there. President Pro Tem Correa is present. Okay. So let's do some follow-up, I think. So tonight, we're going to start with following up with the DPW, some of the outstanding issues there. And I just want to I think we want to get a handle on the the sewer system, the consent decree, and storm drain issue. And it looks like we have, I think Bill Bombard from the DPW department here who can attest to it. I believe that's why we continued on that issue. So let's first do this, Mr. Clerk. Let's have, I see Mr. Mancini, and I think, is there, also Councilwoman Miller's present too. Is Ms. Silvera here? Right.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Silveria will not be attending this evening, but Ms. Lindberg will be attending in her place.
Okay, so let's do this first. Why don't we swear Mr. Mancini and Ms. Lindberg in first, and then we'll swear in the DPW folks.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, Mr. Mancini, and your position.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Ms. Lindberg, will you do that also, please?
Yes, Krista Lindberg, Deputy Finance Director for the City of Providence.
Thank you. So next, let's swear in the DPW folks. Mr. Clerk, it'll be Mr. Parada, Mr. Bombard, Mr. Hockman, and who else? I think that's it at this time.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Parada, please identify yourself and your position, please, and then Mr. Bombard, then Mr. Hockman.
Leo Parada, Director of Public Works.
Mr. Bombard is muted.
No, we don't have audio from him. Let me see. We might have.
Right there, so right there, WB.
Yeah,
he's a guest. It said muted. Watch, click on the picture.
No, I can click that to mute him.
Oh.
I don't know.
All right, so let's get Mr. Hockman. Could you state your name and your position?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Craig Hockman, the Deputy Chief Engineer.
Okay, great.
So, Mr. Bombard, we might have some issue with your audio. I don't know if the mic is turned on your machine. It doesn't show that you're muted, so there's some issue with the microphone picking up your voice. Yeah, we're not getting you. I mean, I can suggest one option, and I don't want to take too much time of people, but if you look in the lower left-hand corner where the mute button is, there's a little arrow next to the mute button that points up, and if you click that arrow, it will give you an option to switch to phone audio, and you can use your telephone to dial in with audio, and then your phone will be used for audio instead of the computer, and that should work just fine. I can send you a document. Right now, we're not getting any audio from you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I changed the setting.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. So let's start with that. What we want to get a handle on is, as you know, the City of Providence had to enter into a consent decree for stormwater drain fallout. And Mr. Director Prada said, I believe, Mr. Bombard, you're in charge of that piece. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So can you give a quick background what it is, what's the consent decree, and then we'd like to get a status of where's the city in that consent decree.
The Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management issued a consent decree against the City of Providence for non-conformance with the RIPD's discharge permit. This was similar to many other communities in the state, and we were issued a consent decree with certain milestones at which we had to meet so that we could bring our system up to conformance with the current regulations. Now, we have been working on this for a number of years now, and we've made some great progress. Some of the items have fallen behind, but we have been in constant communication with RIPD's, with DEM, and they're satisfied with the progress we've made to date. So if I can just highlight a few items, this was issued in the form of a memorandum to the city council by Mr. Parada, and I'll just kind of summarize where we stand. One of the first issue was street sweeping. We've made some great progress as far as how often we sweep the streets. We're in the process of developing a GIS map that we'll be able to post on the web page, so that not only will we be able to keep track of where we're working, but we will be able to inform the citizens as to where we have swept and where we're going to be sweeping again. I think the next issue is a mapping program for our collection system. Keep in mind that the city has approximately 40% of its area served by separate storm sewers that collect stormwater and discharge it to receiving streams, either ponds or rivers or the like. We had to create a map so that we know exactly what areas are covered by the stormwater system. This is going to drive all further efforts towards conforming to this consent decree. This was no small undertaking. It involved a lot of review of old mapping, field work, surveying, things of that nature. And we're just about wrapping that up. We expect to have that done within a month or so. And this is driving what we're going to be doing in the future. The other item of concern is the stormwater management program plan. This is an overall plan that addresses what has to be done, keeping in mind that many of the waterways in which our storm system discharge into are impaired by specific pollutants. And so we have to address these pollutants as we develop this plan so that we can mitigate the impacts of these receiving waters. Following the completion of this plan, we'll be looking at presenting an ordinance to the city council so that we can move this forward. Another step that we're working on is the elimination of illicit connections to our stormwater system. There have been cases where sanitary sewer has been connected to the stormwater, which discharges raw sewage into the bay or the rivers. And we are in the process of identifying where these potential connections may be. This is a difficult task where we have to trace upstream, testing water, identifying what the pollutants are until we can finally resolve where the illicit connection is. This is the brunt of our efforts right now. And I think finally we have to look at our catch basins. We're obligated to clean the basins, inspect the basins, and monitor the basins for future maintenance requirements. Since we have the combined system serving a portion of the city and the balance served by the stormwater system, well, we are lagging behind because we were developing the map to identify those areas of the city where the catch basins are connected to the stormwater system. So that is, as I mentioned earlier, that mapping is being completed now, and we will know then what specific catch basins have to be cleaned, inspected, and monitored to comply with the consent decree. And finally, I'd like to talk about what is happening at Roger Williams Park. The ponds in the park were in very bad shape, polluted and the like. The people in the Parks Department are working very diligently to install best management practices to mitigate some of these pollutants. And they're doing an outstanding job in this regard. Now, the bottom line is funding for this work that we're undertaking, all the various items I previously mentioned, is coming out of the capital improvement plan. So that it's not coming out of the operating budget for the department.
Mr. Bombard, let's talk before we get to the funding. Very quickly, is there a company you guys hired to do the GIS mapping?
Yes, we're working with CDM Smith.
Okay. And do you know how much we paid to date so far, and how much will it further cost with CDM Smith?
I don't have the numbers that we've paid to date. Where we're probably looking at another close to $400,000 moving forward.
And are we paying that $400,000 from the CIP?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so that's allocated in CIP. And all right. Do one thing at a time. Next, the street sweeping. Per that, how many? What's the plan for street sweeping? Don't we have to do it so many times a year? Is that right?
According to our consent decree, we have to sweep the streets 2 times per year.
Okay, that's it. All right. All right. Next, is GIS and mapping is the same thing, correct?
That is correct.
The same map. Okay. Next, it says by. Okay, so it says that that by June 30th of 2020, that I guess this that the city will have to inspect all city-owned catch basins and manholes for illicit connections and non-stormwater discharge and document the results of the inspections. So basically, we have maybe a month and a week or so. We are on track to fulfill that request per the consent decree, that requirement?
We are not on track to meet that requirement of the consent decree. The issue has been developing the map to identify the areas of the city served by the stormwater collection system, the MS4. And until we had that in hand, we could not proceed with the catch basin work.
When will CDM Smith be finished with the MS4, as you call it, the mapping?
The mapping we expect to be completed by the end of June.
Okay. And does the mapping then show the illicit connections, or it's just the location of everything?
The mapping shows the network of pipes, manholes, outfalls, and catch basins. Once we know which catch basins are connected to the stormwater system, the MS4, then we can proceed with doing the monitoring, cleaning, and inspection of those catch basins.
So it looks like, I guess, is the map also due June 30th, 2020?
The map will be completed
But
by
is it,
June
is
30th,
it, that's all,
2020.
I think that's also due by the consent decree also, is that correct?
Yes, the map is a requirement of the consent decree.
But it looks like it's due this month, next month. That's what I'm saying, it's officially due, is that right?
Yes, the map is due by the end of the month this year, end of
Okay.
June.
So the total cost of this entire project, do you guys have an estimate yet?
It's a challenge to come up with an exact number because one of the key components of the consent decree is the elimination of illicit connections. Until we have a better handle as to the extent of that problem, we don't have a final number.
Okay. Is it also to rebuild the stormwaters too, the actual systems themselves? Right? Any collapsed stormwater drains, do you have to rebuild them too, part of this project?
As we encounter defects in the system, we will be doing repairs. A lot of them can be done in pieces and spot repairs. That's really not a big challenge.
So let's talk about when the GIS map is done, then all the identification of all the stormwater drains are there, all the connections, all the lines. Will it be, who will actually then begin the process to disconnect the illegal connections? Will it be a private company or will it be the DPW department?
Well, the illicit connections have to be removed by the property owner, the one that is responsible for that connection. If for example, a business or a resident tied into a storm sewer rather than the sanitary sewer, it would be up to the property owner to make that repair.
I realize that, but then that's got to do with like litigation potentially, and et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm asking is what will the city do? What will the city, what happens, is the city just gonna block it on our end? Or try to convince this company or person to go disconnect it on their end, you know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, the system's still, like you probably could get into a Donnybrook, right? So like what's the plan for that scenario? Isn't it just easier just to block the illegal connection that's going into the sewer line on our end?
I think we're obligated to work with the residents and property owners of the city so as to not affect their business or resident. And we should be able to provide them with a reasonable amount of time in which to make the repairs or changes that need to be made. After which case, then we would be forced to physically block that connection.
So who will run that portion of the program? Will it come out of DPW, will start doing the notices and negotiating with the homeowners or the business owners?
Yes, that would come from DPW, in conjunction with the law department, obviously.
So who in the DPW department will be doing that specifically?
That would come under the engineering division.
The stormwater drain team? I'm sorry?
The engineering division would handle that.
Okay. Is the belief that all the costs for this entire consent decree will be borne on the CIP? Is that what we're saying?
At this time, yes.
Okay. Will there be any costs that are not in the CIP?
Under the current proposed budget, no, not at all.
Okay. And then it looks like because we haven't met some of the, what do you call it, the milestones in the consent decree. How have we dealt with that, with the enforcement piece so we don't get penalized $25,000 a day?
we have been we're in constant communication with the folks at DEM. They're aware of our efforts. They're aware of the challenges that we've met, and we have a good relationship with them, and they have made no indication as wanting to assess any fines or financial penalties.
And is that going through have they officially said that, like in writing, so this way we're covered? Well, it's just been verbal back and forth.
It's been mostly in the form of email communication.
Okay.
That they have not said that they're satisfied with the progress we've made.
All right. So is the law department involved now with that conversation with them? Do you know? Are you aware?
No, I'm not aware of any involvement by the law department.
So, City Solicitor Shiverini, could you just have the law department intercede in that and just make sure that we're all set on our end?
I will. I think there is someone who is working from the law department who handles DPW department, but I will confer with that person and make certain that those discussions are ongoing and we're involved.
Great. Thank you. I just want to go back to one other thing. So I noticed.
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt?
I'm sorry. Let's see. Vice Chair Ryan.
Yes,
Sorry.
you were referring to a document that the other committee members didn't have the benefit of reviewing. Can we see the consent decree? I would like to look at it and understand what our obligations are firsthand.
Yes.
Has that been provided?
The clerk will.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Solicitor?
At your request, I did forward a copy to the clerk. I don't know if he's provided it to the committee or the status of it, but I was able to secure one today.
Can that be circulated, please? And I think we could enter it into the record since we've had a discussion about it.
Sure.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
Mr. Clerk, did you want?
Email to the committee a few minutes.
Oh, okay. The clerk said it was just emailed just before the meeting, so when he got it. So what we'll do is we'll enter that into the record as, what's the latest exhibit?
So currently, yeah, up to 14%.
Yeah, no, but I don't think we entered. I don't think we've gone that far and entered.
So
How?
B10, you created into B10 yesterday?
That we entered the public work.
Okay, so then we'll have to we'll make a motion to enter the consent decree, which is a multi-page document. We'll identify it as. We'll make it B. Was it B10?
Well, we're keeping the budget documents together. Do you want to have like a?
I'll call it B10A.
Like a,
Want to do that? Or do you want to call it deliverable 1?
deliverable.
Okay, all right. So if I could, Madam Vice Chair, if we could, we'll identify the consent decree as an exhibit, deliverable 1, and if we can make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Anthony.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Director, I just wanted to follow up a little on the work day. I want to get a sense of, now I know this week you've said that DPW now is in theory ramping up. All the DPW folks coming to work now on an 8-hour shift?
So everyone's coming to work. It depends upon the nature of their job. So highway, they're coming in all day or in shifts. Administrative staff is staggered. So, and they'll be ramping up as we go along. We felt it was more important that we get the outside work done because that was critical. The other staff, they can do work remotely, whereas the outside staff, they cannot. So we've ramped them up first.
When you say shifts, what do you mean by shifts? What are the shifts?
So basically, we have a shift in the morning, a shift in the afternoon, a shift in the evening. And we have guys, so we can keep one person to a truck and keep them safe. And now we're unsuiting all of our trucks from the winter, and that will minimize the need for multiple shifts. So we can have
So
everybody out.
you have 3 shifts right now, you're saying?
Right.
And what that shift is from when to when?
So we do a shift in the morning, 7 to around 11, 11:30, and another one, 11:30 to 3:30. And then we have the evening shift overnight.
So 7 to 11, and then 11:30 to 3:30.
Right.
And what's the other, what's the nighttime one?
The nighttime one is full because there's less people on that shift. So we're able to do a full shift.
Are they getting overtime for that nighttime shift?
No, they're getting their regular differential, which they always do for the third shift, but no overtime.
But is that person, so people are doing basically like 4-hour shifts? So they're not, so a person's still working 4 hours but getting paid for 8, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Right. So they're still getting paid, they're getting paid basically almost double time right now for working 4 hours.
They will be full-time probably next week, once we have all our trucks available, so they can all go in separate vehicles. So that's what we're doing right now.
All right, so, and I just want to understand that, because I understand the separate, I've heard you say the separate vehicles sometimes. I'm trying to understand that because I have seen major public work departments, major construction sites, major construction companies where you can have more than one person in the truck. They just have the appropriate, mask and gloves and stuff on. So it seems to be this is a unilateral decision on who made that policy, because it seems it's kind of like it's not necessarily a necessary policy. I don't understand why it has to be one person per truck or vehicle. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, because it's really not happening. Basically, it's more about people wearing the appropriate personal protection equipment, making sure they have it, and they're not holding hands and not breathing on each other, and they're not, et cetera. So at the end of the day, it's just, so I know major corporations and major construction companies and major public works have more than one person in a truck. So I'm trying to understand why are you applying? I understand you're gonna go to the go-to, which is COVID-19. I get that. That's the go-to reason why people are managing the way they're managing, but that doesn't mean it's correct. So I'm trying to understand that. Do you folks down at DPW know some other information about the health issues about COVID-19 specifically that is causing something in the city of Providence proper versus the rest of the state and the rest of the nation? Because it seems to be Providence is in a unique situation where you created this unique policy. So can you tell us the unique elements of your policy or the unique elements of the city of Providence that is causing you to do that additional step?
I don't think
you can't just say COVID, you just can't say COVID-19. Clearly, you have the city of Providence DPW division, and actually the city of Providence has additional information more than the rest of the country or the world or the state has about this and how to function and manage. So can you please tell me what's the additional information that you seem to have inside information. So could you give me that inside information for the record, and maybe then we can bring it forward to the rest of the state and the rest of the country? Could you help us with that?
Mr.
And who
Chairman,
made that policy specifically?
if I may,
Yeah.
I don't think we have any additional information than anyone else. I think it's just a policy that has been agreed upon by the administration and the union to keep the staff safe as best as possible. We're doing everything that we possibly can to keep them out of harm's way. Whether we think it's overkill or not, that's a decision that we have made. And I think it's been served the members of DPW well.
So this is the same union, by the way, that is doing a full-time job, not more than a couple of feet away from you guys, working full-time shifts, working full hours during this whole situation. Just, so you're saying the union, that very union, are you trying to say the union that union forced this particular issue? Because that doesn't make sense, because up in the other departments of Public Works and State One, that union actually has embraced a different process where everybody actually does come to work all day long, doesn't sit home, get paid and do nothing. So I'm still trying to understand that what happened, because it's the same union leadership. So why is the city doing something that they didn't agree to any of that across any other places in the state? Doesn't make any sense. And by the way, they're still being safe, and the union negotiated and agreed to a split shift, which is basically just it's still doing 8 hours, but it's like an 8-hour shift. It's just separated from 5 in the morning to 1 and 2, and then from 7 o'clock to 3 and 4. So they did it that way, but they didn't say, oh, our guys will sit home all day or half a day and get paid. So I mean, so who negotiated that with the union specifically?
I couldn't tell you.
If I remember correctly, do you know who negotiated that specifically?
No, I do not.
Okay. So now, is this kind of, this next week, are you going to be going to a normal person who's going to actually come to work for 8 hours, and put a full day's work in for pay, or is next week still going to be this kind of like I work for 4 and I get paid for 8? I get double time.
We're ramping up to 8 hours for everyone. So there's going to be no difference in their pay.
No. I recognize there's been no difference in anybody's pay during this whole situation. In fact, the only difference is that they haven't been working. We recognize that, Director. The point is they haven't been working. You haven't been very efficient with your staff. You haven't been very innovative. In fact, you've been just the opposite. And the council has been brought this up to the administration for the past couple of months, and yet it's taken this far just to get here. That's the point. And that's the interesting thing. And places which have not done what you did have been just as safe or safer, and actually produced a work product that the taxpayers deserve to receive. So that makes no sense. So it seems to me that whatever's going on over there, you folks seem to be doing something. Either one, you feel you have a money tree, and two, you feel that the taxpayer doesn't deserve to get a fair day's work for a fair day's wage. When, by the way, a lot of taxpayers are losing their jobs as we speak right now. And I'm sure they'd love to be sitting home all day long. They were working for the city, getting paid full pay, and not working. Okay? So I guess we'll expect an internal auditor. Can you monitor that situation, internal auditor?
Yes, sir.
And can you also monitor the overtime? Because that's also pretty insulting too, when the person doesn't work all week, gets paid full pay, and then you bring them in for OT. So I'd like to know how that's playing out too. Especially with that, that we paid them OT for, to put up the Safe Street initiative. All right. Okay. And at this time, the number of, that's what I was at. Mr. Bombard, what I was asking, the question we had was the asset management. Do we have an asset management plan for the Public Works Department?
No, we do not.
Okay. Is CDM Smith working on an asset plan for the public DPW?
CDM Smith is working on a map that will identify all of the assets associated with our stormwater collection system. There are a lot of other assets that the city has, in particular Public Works, that are not going to be captured under the ongoing efforts.
What are the other assets? Is the sewer lines not being, and all the other? So CDM Smith is just strictly doing the stormwater issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, and so we don't have any type of asset management plan at all right now. in place of DPW. And do we know where all our sewer lines are and the conditions of them at this time?
We know where the sewer lines are, but we don't have a good handle as far as the conditions of those sewers.
Okay. So can CDM Smith, are they able to do that type of asset management plan for us?
They certainly can.
Okay. So the other night, I think it was portrayed to this committee that was actually happening. So that's not happening at this time. So can we begin the process to figure out maybe we should engage in that? Since you're going to have them out there in the field anyway, and we've talked about it before, we understand the sewage isn't the most exciting of topics, but for a metropolis of the size of the city, it's important that we know what the status of those types of assets are, because you need to then do a 10-year plan or plan on what you need to do to fix them presently in the future. Do you have any, for example, I know I mentioned about the Providence Water, where they actually, they know their water lines, and they begin this methodical planning of like replacing and fixing, and you know what I mean? Not just maintaining, but actually doing a proactive replacing. Do you have a proactive replacing or repairing plan for the sewer system?
No, we do not.
So can CDM Smith be able to put that together for the department?
We can certainly speak with them. I know they have the capability. The question is going to be identifying the funds that we need and to accomplish that goal.
Right. I mean, I would think that that's something we could talk about with the CIP money. We can maybe start talking about reallocating maybe some of that towards that if we can get a value point for it. But it seems to me the city still needs to know what their assets are. What are the type of other assets that the DPW maintains? What are the assets that DPW maintains?
We have all of the roads in the city, and we have a very good handle as far as the road conditions, the pavement conditions. We have all of the sidewalks. We have a very good idea as to the extent of the problems that we have. And we've set aside monies in the CIP to address roads and sidewalks. Great.
Okay. And now, have you guys initiated when utility companies now come around that I guess now they're going how it's going to be for them repairing the road? They're going to do it from curb to curb now. How does it work?
Well, there was some recent legislation with regard to utilities restoring roadways. And we're working with them to conform to those regulations.
I was up at Atwells Avenue up in Federal. I know they're digging up the entire road right now. I guess installing a new gas system. Or is it a gas line? I think.
New gas line, correct.
Will that utility company? I mean, because it's a mess. Will they be repaving the entire Atwells Avenue curb to curb?
Yes.
Do you know when they'll be doing that?
No, I do not.
Craig, maybe
is there a way we can
that question for you?
Yeah,
Director?
Yeah, I can chime in on that. National Grid is projecting to be completed by the end of this year. They've been lucky in that Atwells Ave is shut down, and they've greatly accelerated their schedule. We're looking at a restoration starting in 2021, maybe some sidewalk restoration starting a bit earlier. But the majority will be in 2021.
So next year, so the road and that will be like that. Now the sidewalks themselves, will they be fixing those sidewalks, or will the city be doing the sidewalks there?
It's going to be primarily the city doing the sidewalks there.
Well, the reason being is because we'll see. It will remain to see if it still will be an economic driver in the upcoming months based on what's happening with this COVID-19. But it was at one time as an attraction. So I guess it's worth it to put money into the sidewalks. The sidewalks are a mess, the trees and all that stuff like that. So we do have a plan that 2021, the road will be repaved completely and the sidewalks will be done late in 2021. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir. We're working towards replacement of all the sidewalks on Atwells Ave within that commercial district. And yes, National Grid is responsible to restore that road curb to curb in a better condition than it was today.
Great, thank you. And National Grid's not giving you any they're not giving you any pushback on doing that correctly, right?
No, sir. After the Rhode Island DOT published or published their regulations regarding the Fair Share Roadway Act. That's when we started enacting the provisions of those provisions. And we have not had any pushback from the utilities.
Thank you. Vice Chair, then Councilwoman Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had a conversation with Craig earlier about the Fair Share Act that was just passed. And I think it's important for this committee to understand fully what Craig had explained to me, and that, actually, maybe Craig, could you be kind enough just to explain the passage of the law, what it means for utility cuts on our streets, what will happen subsequent to that is different from what has happened in the past? Would you mind just sharing that with the committee?
Yeah, sure. Prior to the Roadway Fair Share Roadway Act, the utilities was responsible to restore only what they disturbed, right? So if they made a trench down the gutter of one street, all they had to pave was the gutter, say 4 feet. This Roadway Fair Share Roadway Act now dictates that they have to pave at least half the road, or as a municipality dictates. So the state said, all right, you've got to do this minimum. However, we recognize that municipalities are somewhat autonomous and they can dictate what they want themselves. We've chosen to dictate the curb to curb method because their disruption is beyond their actual road excavation. They're driving equipment, they're using equipment shovels and buckets, which disturb the roadway. And I think they owe it to the citizens to make a full restoration on a roadway that they disturb and disturbing the lives of those abutters.
Thank you, Craig. Do you need a resolution from the council? You said that the municipality is dictating that your preference is curb to curb paving. Should we be giving you an ordinance demanding that?
I think the Rhode Island General Law is power enough. And if it does become a problem, we'd certainly seek your support in that. I don't anticipate any problems at this time.
Left up to the municipality to dictate how they wanted it done. Okay, we'll look into that from a legislative perspective, but what I did want to say is that for the benefit of the committee, it's clear that many of our roads are left that have already been cut into by the utility companies were repaved in a spotty way, not curb to curb, as now is the new requirement or the new desired approach. So in our repaving plan for our CIP, can you not hear me, John? You're waving?
No, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Continue.
We're
trying to fix a technical issue, that's all.
You're just distracting me, waving at me. I thought you could hear me. That's okay.
No.
All right, so I guess what I'm saying is we have a paving plan on our CIP. What are those streets that have been cut up by the utility work? Many of them are half paved, spottily paved. Are those streets getting priority in the repaving plan? Because 50% of the street in some cases are repaved, or 10% of the street are repaved, and then the rest of the street is a mess. So how are you handling those, and what priority are you giving to those streets that have been already compromised, if you will, by the utility companies, Craig?
Sure. So they are not being prioritized. When we do our condition analysis, half of that road comes up as good condition, with the other in in its degraded state. So it doesn't ring to us as sounding alarm bells for needing action because of its condition.
So actually, I'm sorry. But actually in this instance, if you have a road that is in really bad shape, condition is deplorable, and half of the street happened to be paved because of a utility cut, and let's just say in some instances 50% of the street was paved, the way the math works out, you're not going to touch that street, although half of the street is deplorable and the other half is in good shape. But because of the utility patch, it brings down the scoring, or it raises the scoring.
Right. So where we've deviated from past now is, instead of getting a reimbursement for 7 feet of the road for paving, we're now getting a reimbursement for the full width of paving. So in this CIP, or in this paving plan that we've presented to the council, we're making a much bigger effort to get behind these utilities to realize their reimbursements to us and bring our overall value or our overall expenditures down. I've calculated some $3 million that we are expecting in reimbursements from the utilities under the CIP. amounting somewhat to $23 million in paving, while our line item is $20 million.
Craig, I think that's great, and I'm not challenging that at all. I'm just trying to make a point that your plan is looking forward, but many of our streets have been compromised, and we're basing our paving plan on the scoring process. But because of what happened, our scoring is skewed, and those streets are in deplorable shape. Half of them are, but again, the other half is in good shape. So I'm going to ask that in your paving plan analysis that you relook and come up with a new math for those streets, because you can't score them as you do the other streets because it fails. The math just doesn't work there, and it works in counterproductive fashion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought that that was an interesting thing that I bumped into recently with Craig, who's been kind enough to explain it to me thoroughly, and I wanted the committee to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilwoman Anthony, then President Pro Tem.
I just wanted to thank the majority leader, because that is exactly what I wanted to hear. I am thrilled. I had no idea about the Fair Share Roadway Act, and I'm just very appreciative because specifically in my ward, we've had a lot of work done by the Providence Water, and it is a mess.
Right.
I don't know if they're doing temporary patching or, it's just a mess. That project, I think, kicked off a year ago. They did a ton of work, and oh my gosh, they left the streets in really terrible shape. So I am thrilled to hear that. I'm assuming Providence Water is going to be bearing a lot of the cost of the roads that you've planned, Mr. Hoffman, I think, to have done in Ward 2. I'm very, I assume that's what's happening, and I guess I'm going to ask you that.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. National Grid has also been in on a lot of those streets, and I've asked them to accelerate some of their work within that geographic area again, so we can get them in and out ahead of our paving. That is going to push some roads out into next year, possibly into 2022. But this is the comprehensive approach that we've all sought and that the council has requested through resolution and ordinance previously.
Well, I have to say, I think that you're doing an excellent job. I think you provide great value in this particular area, because I think the compliance with these, staying after these utilities to do what they're supposed to do is just critical.
Yeah, it's difficult, but that new legislation really standardizes it for us and sets that expectation.
Great. Thank you.
President Pro Tem Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a follow-up regarding this, Greg. Do we have anybody within DPW that is going out and checking to make sure that the utilities and their contractors that they're hiring are following these new guidelines? Because I have an issue on Academy Avenue, which we just paved. National Grid did the gas, but just yesterday they had a contractor out there and they grinded up the road, but they didn't go curb to curb. They just did a square, actually 2 squares there at Academy and Wealth. And they also have it marked out for grinding at Academy and Dover, but they're only going to the center line. They're not going curb to curb.
So those permits may have predated the passage or the rules and regulations set forth by DOT. That's when we enacted those rules. I believe it's dated December 19th of 2019. So it's every permit issued thereafter is where we're requiring those new standards to be met. I will look into that tomorrow. I know that there were some gas leaks immediately after we finished paving there. I just want to make sure that's the work, and I will be in touch with them to make sure, if that's the case,
So
that they're
2 are
restoring
by
to that new
National
standard.
Grid, 2 are by National Grid, and 1 is by Providence Water. The one at Academy and Dover is Providence Water.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that. And yes, we do have 1 person. We've got a staff of 2 right now who are issuing permits, inspecting any issues that come up, and handling all the other day-to-day activities of the engineering division.
All right, because we just got done doing Academy Avenue. I mean, that was a shame that they went there and dug that all up, Providence Water and the gas company.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't stop them in the event of an emergency. If there is a gas leak that qualifies as an emergency, same with a water leak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To President Pro Tem. I just want to follow up on a couple of items. The speed humps, past few years, I have allocated thousands of dollars to buy and purchase temporary speed humps for my ward, and they're all gone. The DPW took them away, and they've never put them back. So I want to know where they are, and then that's the first thing. I bought thousands of them, thousands of dollars worth. And the second thing is, I noticed that DPW seems to be now installing permanent speed humps on their own. The asphalt humps. So my take is, I don't know what happened to the temporary speed humps that were paid for, the money I allocated for my ward. I don't know where they are, but what I'd rather do is that just put those permanent ones that I see you guys putting in all over the place now. They're like small squares. Is that correct? Is DPW doing that, Director?
So the temporaries we put in, and we evaluate them over the course of time with the traffic engineer. He does a study to determine whether a temporary is going to continue or whether it needs to be converted to a permanent measure. The permanent measures are done by a private contractor. We've gone out to bid with that. I think there are a couple of them that do it for us. Maybe Amber and Cardi. So the temporaries, we're scheduling to put those back out there next week, and we'll continue to do that as time goes on. And when we're converting from temporary to permanent, those will be shifted over to the contractor to make those permanent locations.
So what I want to do is I want to convert my temporary ones into that, because you guys have, last couple of years is that you would put them down, then of course, then take them up for the winter, then put them down, take them up for the winter. That doesn't make any sense. So my take is, I've seen the contractor, I thought it was DOT, Providence DPW, but you're saying it's a private contractor, and he does little squares, and they put them in places that there weren't humps at all. They just put them in there. So I would like to allocate, I want to get them, the locations in my ward converted to permanent.
All right, please
So what's the
forward that
process that I have
information
to-
to us. And so you understand the reason why temporaries come up, when a plow hits a
'cause there's
temporary,
snow.
it's going to remove it. The permanent, it will stay.
No, I recognize that. That's why I figured let's just cut to the chase. Instead of spending more money on the temps and having you guys install them and uninstall them and then install them, we'll just convert it to the permanent ones. So how do we go about the process to get that done?
Just email me or send me the information, and I'll get that to our traffic engineer, and we'll get them scheduled.
All right. So that's all. That's what I like to do. And you folks have all the locations, because there's a bunch of them. So I'm just going to say, simply say convert the temporary ones into permanent ones, and this way we don't have to worry about it. Okay? Thank you. That's on that one. Next one is road striping and crosswalks. Now, I believe, do we do that through a private contracting, or do we also have our own in-house striping crew?
That's all done through private contracting.
So are they out there now doing the crosswalks? What are they right now, or will they do it before school?
They do it now.
When will
They
that
start
happen?
generally in the spring. Their crews may be a little bit smaller now, but they are doing it.
Director, can you have them provide to you and to provide to us what's the schedule of the crosswalks and when they'll be done in each neighborhood? So we get a sense, like, I presume, I don't know how many you have. How many companies do you have doing it? Is it a couple of them, 2 or 3?
Generally, we have one. Sometimes there's 2, depending upon workload. So we can get the schedule for you. That's easy.
Could you get the schedule so we can see? I want to see when they're going to come around my neck of the woods, and then I'm sure other council members want to know when they're going to come around their neck of the woods.
Sure.
It'll be very helpful. Okay? So if you can get that schedule, all right? All right. Okay. I think we didn't have, any other questions at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair?
thank you. While you were speaking about the temporary bumps and the lumps, there are a number of council people that have approached me with the same issue. So I don't know what the delay in getting the speed bumps down on the temporary bumps back are. I have a number of locations where we've done traffic studies. We put the temporary lumps down, The neighbors were asked if they wanted them permanent raised crosswalks or speed bumps. We got that information and we're waiting to move forward. So the reality is with COVID-19, we recognize we had limited staff. We recognize that there's also less cars on the road, which has had the unfortunate result of having cars speed through our streets to a greater degree than that they have in the past. So not having those temporary speed bumps up is very problematic. And I know there's been a number of accidents, fatal deaths, fatalities. We've had, a number of accidents on our streets in recent months, and it's troubling. So those speed bumps are there, not because, we think it's a great idea. They're there because studies were done and we need them in those locations. So I would just like to ask Leo, I know I've had a conversation recently with Leo relative to my ward, but it's not just my ward, it's other wards in the city. Council people are asking for assistance. So if you could focus on that, and I know you've been working on COVID-19 retrofits and other things, but those are really important to the neighborhoods. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments or questions this time? Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you, Director and Deputy Directors and all the DPW folks. Thank you for your time, energy, and effort. Stay safe, and we appreciate you participating. And if we have any further questions, we'll get back to you, or we'll call you back if we need to.
Thank you,
Thank you. And one other thing, Director, do you provide to the internal order the proposed 30% cuts that the administration, that you submitted to the administration? Did you get it to the internal auditor today?
I presented that information to administration, so I'll leave that to them to present.
Okay, so we need that information. Mr. Mancini? I think he's...
Mr. Chairman, duly noted, and I will refer that to the Chief of Operations.
Right. And, all right. Well, we'll keep on moving along, trying to get through this. All right. Thank you. And let's move on to the next. I know it's. Thank you very much, Director and the DPW.
Thank you.
So let's continue on. What do we have tonight? I don't know if we're going to get to. So why don't we do this? I know we're not going to be able to get to some of these items. I hate to say it, so I don't want to leave them here on the line forever. So could we do a motion by committee members to continue the law department and the board of license, and I would say information technology this time until tomorrow? Is it tomorrow? It's tomorrow. It's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow.
So moved.
Because we got the planning department. I'm thinking it's we have these long meetings, so maybe we can go one step at a time. So why don't we do this time? I want to make a motion. So Vice Chair makes the motion we'll continue the law department, information technology, board of license to tomorrow's finance meeting. Do I have a second by Councilman Anthony?
And second.
Thank you. Say it.
With vital records.
Yeah, I know. With the rest of tomorrow night.
Right.
Right? Is that right?
Board of licenses includes vital records. Just wanted to make.
Oh, and vital records. Yes. All right. Okay. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So this way, those departments don't have to, they can stay on the line if they want to, but this way, they don't have to at this time, you know? Okay? Thank you. So let's get to the planning department, and where we left off. We had a wonderful discussion about Safe Streets. I think we took that thing out. I think we took that out for a long ride, and I think we're all set with that issue, I think, at this time. So, let's start getting to the nitty-gritty of your actual budget. So we started talking about, if I remember correctly, right about the city boards and commissions, and I believe I asked the city solicitor, and I believe it was it Mr. Madam Department, did we swear in the Director of Planning yet? Oh, no. Hang on, we haven't. Yeah. All right, you have a problem? Oh. Can you folks see us?
I can hear.
I can hear you, yep. Okay, great. So why don't we just, let's swear in. So we have the Director of Planning. Who else do we have from Planning, Director?
The Finance Director, Sally Brito, is on the line as well.
Great. So let's swear those two folks in.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name, Director, and your position.
Sure. Bonnie Nickerson, City Planning Director.
And Ms. Brito? I don't see her. Do you see her?
That might be who's trying to.
I think she's trying to get her sound turned on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not good. Just like my computer's on the. Hold on. Let me see. Get a little.
Hang on one second, folks. I have a little technical difficulty. Can Ms. Brito hear us?
No. So, can Ms. Brito, let me see if I can send her a custom invite so she can join.
All right, so Mr. Clerk's gonna try to contact Ms. Brito to try to get her.
She's able to hear you. She's able to hear you, but I think she has to be upgraded to be able to present.
All right. He's working on that. We'll keep on rolling right now. Wasn't the deputy, the deputy director said he was at another meeting earlier. Is that right, Director?
That's right. He's going to attempt to join us when he's able.
Great. Perfect. And then we were going through did we end up getting the breakdown of all the boards and commissions? I think we asked for that, all the folks and the people.
Yeah, we sent all of that over today to Finance. I believe they provided that to you.
Right. So what do we have? I'm sorry? I don't know. It's all the breakdowns of the boards. Can I see what that is? No, I don't know what you have. Well, I think we did. We're gonna have to. Did we enter B10 into the record?
We did enter B10. We haven't entered 11, 12, 13, and 14 like polio, IT, law, but B10 was entered last
So
night.
B10's on there. It was that stays on there. It was deliverables we were looking for. We were looking for did you send us the breakdown of Providence Business Loan Fund, Director?
So we sent the makeup of each of the boards, and for the PBLF, there's some additional information that we can talk through, but I believe we did send some information over earlier today.
Okay, I think maybe this. I'm looking at it. I don't know if you can see it. Does this look familiar? This can you tell this aging report? Looks like it's in yellow. I guess it has. This must be from the Providence Business Loan Fund.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So the committee members, did you get copies to them? Were you able to email copies to them? Were you able to email copies of the deliverables from the VP, from the planning department?
Yes, they were emailed a few yesterday, I believe, but I can.
So this is V14. Is there other ones?
Yep.
Okay, so let's put them into the record. And then we'll go.
If you want to change the numbering on.
No, I'll keep the number, and then we'll just jump back to that. I'll keep her organized, all right? This is, okay, actually, what do you call it? The consent decree, this has already been entered.
Can you just
that's all
take a
set.
motion to change that one to D12?
Yep. And oh, okay. This is a report actually from the Craig Hockman, which she entered into the record, and I just got it in my hands here. It's an email, and I guess, you know, I have the committee members take a look at it. You sent this to the committee members, Mr. Clerk? All right. So committee members, if you see, it's identified as D13, and it's attached to the map of DPW's prioritization plan for sewer inspection and cleaning. It's with a map attached. I think he said he emailed it to you folks. I don't know if you have it.
I don't have it.
Does that look familiar at
I
all?
can't find it either.
I don't have those, so unless,
Okay, you don't have them either?
can your clerk just
All right.
tell us when he might have sent that? Because I don't see it in my emails.
Yes, it was sent at 4:42 PM to the committee members.
Oh, today.
and- Yes.
Madam Vice Chair, do you have those exhibits?
I do not
Vice
have
Chair?
them. I do not have them. I'm looking through my emails. I cannot find anything. I don't know whether it went into trash, but
No,
I
I
really
do not
need to be
either.
able to look at them.
Nope.
Were you able to resend them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so while the clerk's resending, then let's just we'll go through the budget right now, and then we'll try to get to these, all right? So hang on to these, and then we'll,
That's great.
because it's just causing, okay? till we
Mr.
get to
Chairman,
that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just wanted to note that our finance director is still waiting for the invite to come through, and I'd like her to be able to participate if possible.
Yeah, we have a technical difficulty on this side,
Okay.
so hang on one second. Hang on 1 second.
So sorry, everyone. Literally, my computer, like the application, the Zoom app is frozen on my screen. So I'm going to try to leave the meeting and see if I can come back in, but I have no idea what happens to the recording at that point. I might have to restart the recording. So this has never happened before. It's not that I don't know how to let the other person in, it's that my screen is grayed out. So let me see if I can kill the app and come back in, and we'll know because the chairman happens to be on a completely different line, and if he doesn't lose it, then I'll know that I can just rejoin. So if not, then everybody might have to rejoin the meeting. So apologies.
No worries, Sean.
So, it's modern technology. Listen, we've come a long way, so. And the clerk, Mr. Clerk and Madam Clerk, they're doing a great job.
So what does it look like on your side? Did you lose anything?
Nope, I see.
Okay, great.
Can you all hear me still?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can.
Yeah, we just have to,
You look the same and sound the same, John.
Great, perfect. Good morning. Is that what Frank Coletti used to do? Good morning. I guess we're off the record right now. You know that, right?
But we should, yeah, keep it recording, because at least we have
We're
this
standing-
recording. You should.
We're standing at ease, right? Should we stand at ease?
Yeah, we can now, but at least you have all this recorded.
Are we standing at ease, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Clerk is trying to reconnect, so we're at ease for a moment, okay?
I'm gonna go get some water.
All right. Ready. Hello, everybody. I think we're gonna try. Do you wanna see if you can connect Miss Brito? Miss Brito, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, look, success. Great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. All right. We were swearing you in, so I guess just, you can finish say your name and title. Ms. Brito.
Sally Brito, Director of Fiscal Operations.
Great, thank you. All right. So why don't we start from the beginning, the budget. Where is the planning department? There it is. And Mr. Mancini, you already done your 3-box presentation, correct, sir, if I remember correctly?
I did, sir.
Right, perfect.
I did.
All right, great.
I'm happy to do it again, Mr. Chairman, if you want the record reflect.
I see you rolling your eyes when you're saying that, Mr. Mancini, sir.
Oh, not at all, sir. I'll be happy to do it again.
All right. So, let's talk about very quickly the director, the budget, your budget itself.
Sure.
Talk about, I mean, I know there's nominal amounts throughout all these budgets, but like for travel and stuff like that, in lieu of what's happening, COVID-19, I cannot imagine there's gonna be much traveling coming out of any office at the city of Providence. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
You'll note that there was a reduction in that line item.
Yeah. I can't imagine that. I was wondering, I noticed the salaries for the present fiscal year. We budgeted 1.7, but then it went up to 2.1. What happened there?
Sally can speak to that.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
I think you're looking at they had to update, they had made an error on our original 3-box report. So I'm not sure that you have, because we're right on budget at 1.7. So I know the first
Have you,
set of,
have you informed Mr. Mancini that his 3-box report is incorrect?
I had informed Crystal and she corrected it. So so they had sent it
Mr.
over
Chairman.
before the adjustment.
Yes,
Chairman, if I
Mr.
may.
Mancini.
I'm looking at the right one.
Okay.
If I may, I believe what Ms. Brito means is there was some additional adjustments that had to be done through payroll, and they're now showing up in that latest version. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's not projected to be 2.1, is that correct?
Correct.
That's
It's
correct.
It's projected to be 1.7.
correct. We will be on
And
budget.
then the proposed 21 budget, you brought it down to 1.6. Can you explain to me how did the reduction happen? Why would it reduce
Due to the
by
additional,
about 100,000?
due to additional federal funding that we're having, that we've received, more of our staff is going to be geared towards using the federal money and carrying out those operations. So we will be able to shift more salaries over to our federal funds. So it's just a shift this year that we have due to the extra funding.
Great. Is it because of COVID-19 or
Yeah.
was all planned
Correct.
to begin with?
Through the Federal CARES Act, we got an additional $4.8 million in federal funds to distribute to relief efforts. And part of that 4.8 can be used for administrative costs. So we were able to shift, as you know, many of the staff in the department have a share between general funds and federal funds. So we were just able to shift a greater percentage over to federal funds. And if I may say just an overall comment about the budget that's before you, you're actually reviewing our 30% reduction in part because we do have that extra support through the federal funds and we were able to shift those dollars. So that is the budget that you have before you is the 30% reduction.
Right. That's positive. I know it's professional fees. What are those for exactly?
Sally, do you want to speak to that?
Those are, the professional fees tend to be studies. We may need to do planning studies or traffic studies for projects that we're running through the department. So that would be where we would use professional fees.
Okay. So it's not professional fees like for the employees, like paying some dues or something like that?
No, we do have a separate line item for that for professional. A lot of our staff have different accreditations that require courses, et cetera. So we do have a line item for that, but the miscellaneous professional fees are really those outside contracts for environmental studies or engineering reports, things like that come up during the course of the year that we want to be able to respond to.
Right. And the other expenditures, what is that? What was that breakdown to? What's it looks like you're spending $225,000 for this present year. In the upcoming proposed year, you're looking to cut it to $100,000. So what do you spend that money on?
Oh.
And why can you then cut it down half?
That is the other expenditures is the administrative costs that we put towards PPBA. And over the course of the years, there's been a shift in the expenses so that they've gone down. Did a 3-year comparison, and it appears that they're about $100,000 a year now rather than they were $225,000. And it has to do with a shift in how the insurance was paid out of that fund.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Good to know. Are there any, there's my other notes. Are there, right now, presently, are there any, in the present budget, right now, the present fiscal year, are there any vacant and funded positions?
Yes, we have 4 positions that are currently vacant and funded. We do not anticipate filling them before the upcoming fiscal year, obviously, as we're already in mid-May, but we are hoping to fill them in the upcoming fiscal year.
Madam Director, what positions are they? I'm looking on the organizational chart.
Yeah, sure. It says vacant, but I'm sure the print is very small, so we can walk through. you'll see at the, towards the top, Director of Real Estate is vacant. And then just one line down, Associate Director of Community Development. And then just further down, Planning Tech and Business Development Research Associate. Those are the 4 positions that are vacant. The Associate Director of Community Development is paid for out of federal funds. So that's a position that we are hoping to fill. It is federally funded. And it really is critical that we do that because of the additional projects that we are taking on. There's 32 additional projects that are COVID-19 related, federally funded through that Federal CARES Act that we talked about. And that person can help with an array of things that are going on in the community development division. As you know, that department always has a significant number of active projects, and even more so this upcoming year.
Let the record reflect that Councilman Taylor is present. He's a member of the committee. And Madam Director, the Director of Real Estate, is that city funds, federal funds, mixed funds? What's that?
The Director of Real Estate is a city funded position through the general fund.
Great. And what about the planning technician?
And those 2 positions are general fund positions as well.
Okay, thank you. All right. And that's what you have now. And do you have did you request for any additional funds? Excuse me, additional positions in the upcoming budget?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Oh. Yeah, I thought we did that.
No, we didn't mention that.
Oh, okay, so we should do that, right? So let's make I'm sorry, I didn't realize that there was also some folks from the Office of Economic Development, I guess. We'll continue them for tomorrow too. I thought we did that.
Continue.
So, all right, the Vice Chair, can we make a motion to do that?
I just did. Motion to continue.
By Vice Chair, do we have a second? By Councilman Taylor, discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So those members, those folks in that division, they can stay for the meeting, or we'll see them tomorrow. We were trying to expedite that, given we didn't have to stay on the line all night. Okay. I'm sorry, continue, Director. You said there are no new positions, you said, right? In the upcoming
Yeah, that's
budget,
right.
correct?
Yep.
All right. Great. All right. All right. Do we still have employees receiving any type of car allowance or stipends in any form or fashion? And if so, who and for what purpose?
Sure. Sally can go through that from the budget point of view, but just noting that I believe since we were last before you last spring, we do have 3 department vehicles for the inspectors. And so those folks were previously receiving a travel stipend, then they no longer receive that. We also have a car that's available for shared use, so staff that need to go out and do a field inspection. So in the past, those folks would have gotten a travel reimbursement for those types of trips. So we do have a car for those purposes as well. I think we do have still a line item in the budget. For example, if someone travels to a conference or something like that and a car is not available, they are able to seek reimbursement for mileage as they would have done in the past. Sally, are there any other points that we should mention in the budget related to travel reimbursement?
No, that covers it. We no longer are giving anyone the monthly stipend, and it's very minimal if they have to travel.
Right. Okay, great. And are there any other kind of stipends, like any other stuff that we're, I know, like, for example, when we talk about these boards and commissions, what does your department do? Does your members sit on these boards, or they clerk those boards, I guess? Or what do they do? What do they do with these boards?
What's up with the board? So we can go through them one by one if that's helpful.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so and the reason why I think might be helpful is because they're slightly different. the City Plan Commission, the Historic District Commission, the Down City Design Review Committee, and Capital Center Commission are boards that are basically housed in our department. Our staff are the staff to these boards. So we handle the day-to-day work, the applications that come in, all of the work associated with those boards. And I believe you have more details in front of you in terms of the membership, et cetera. I know Historic District Commission sends an annual report to the City Council every year on their work. So that group is really sort of the development review boards and commissions. So for projects that are in the City of Providence of any size or scale, most of them are going through one of those boards. And we provide the staff for those boards, as well as the regulations that are behind the boards. For the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, that is a little bit different. That's strictly an advisory committee, and it is just we provide support to that board, but we don't directly have the same engagement that we do with those other boards. Same with the Harbor Management Commission. We provide support to that board, but we don't have the level of direct involvement, but a staff member is assigned to that board. The Providence Public Building Authority, if Larry would like to speak to that a little bit more, that I'm happy to defer to him, but our staff provides administrative support for the PPBA. The Providence Business Loan Fund, I know you have information in front of you about that. Again, that's a quasi board that it has a separate board outside of our department. But the reason why I have it included here is our staff provides compliance, monitoring, fiscal support, all of the kind of day-to-day operational support for their work. And then the other board that's listed here is the Providence Redevelopment Agency, and that's directly tied to our department. I serve as the executive director of that board, and Sam Budway serves as the deputy director and general counsel. And the work of that that body is very much housed in our department. And as Councilman Taylor noted last night, he and Councilwoman Harris both serve on that committee. And then, sorry. Oh, I was just going to note that on the state boards, basically we have a seat on those boards. So I serve as a member of the I-195 Commission and a delegate to the State Planning Council. And then we do have staff that are represented through the Technical Committee of the State Planning Council and the Transportation Advisory Committee at DOT. So that that's the whole picture of all of the boards that we are involved in.
Correct. I was on, I noticed we have like the Historic District Commission, I get that, the downtown design. This is one thing that I was wondering, like what happens sometimes like throughout the neighborhood, especially in the city, right? When you look at these boards and commissions, they're very, they have specific kind of like jurisdiction. It's downtown, it's 195, it's historic stuff, right? But like the rest of the neighborhoods kind of, so, and what happens is we'll get these kinds of like zoning requests or zoning changes like before the zoning board. How does that interact to make sure that, that a multi-family house doesn't get built with a bunch of single-family houses? I'm talking about a neighborhood portion, like, not necessarily in the downtown historic. So your department, what role does it play in that aspect? Someone says, okay, I want to put a gas station in the middle of single-family houses, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. So
yeah, sure.
Does any board of commissions handle that stuff? I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so it really depends. It depends on the type of development. So for each of these boards and commissions, it has threshold criteria about which projects would have to come before those different boards. The Zoning Board of Review, I didn't put on here because it's technically under the jurisdiction of DIS. So staff of DIS staff the Zoning Board of Review. However, our department provides an advisory opinion for the work that is coming before the zoning board. So we work very collaboratively with the DIS and provide an advisory opinion to a project, like you said, that is proposing something that they need to go seek a zoning variance or a zone change in order to implement that project.
And is that also, does your department also weigh in the board of license also?
Not directly, not directly. They may reach out with a question, but we don't review each of those cases that come before the board of licensing. No.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I think that, any questions on the boards and commissions, like committee members, council members? Okay, good. Can you take us through, like, when I look at the associate director special projects and that, like, principal planners?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the plan is actually, like, what's the plan is do? What's that division do exactly?
Yeah. So that first group, principal planners, so that first group that you see, Chris, Jason, Choyan, and that group, I'll start with them. They are the ones that are actually assigned to these boards and commissions. So the way I like to describe that is they are handling the current projects that are coming in, the applications that are getting dropped off, the review that's happening through those boards. So for example, we have 21 projects that are now currently under review by those boards. We have 10 projects that were just recently completed through that review who have now into permitting. So those are the staff members that are constantly looking at those projects, setting up meetings with the applicants, going through their proposed development projects, and walking through the different stages of that review. And then continuing down, so I'll just group some of these other folks together too. Alex, Jessica, Anna. Those folks are working on what we used to call long-range projects. So those folks are working with EPA and Rhode Island DEM on various projects around the city. We work very closely with Rhode Island DOT on TIP-funded projects. So for example, the Woonasquatucket River Greenway is a major TIP-funded project. So those folks work on those projects. So it's really kind of the forward-looking. They're not reviewing applications that come in the door. They are working on projects that we are implementing mostly through grant funds. We do a whole series of projects with state and federal grants. We're very successful at getting competitive grants to invest in our neighborhoods. And then going further down, Dave Jose Reese is our GIS manager. He handles not just the GIS system for our department, but is very involved in helping to manage the GIS system citywide. And he also helps to train up staff in various departments who are becoming more adept in using GIS for their department functions. So Dave leads the effort around that. And then Alexis, as you see here, is our neighborhood liaison. She has a very important role of outreach to all community organizations, neighborhood associations. She attends all of those meetings and helps us with our public outreach efforts. As you know, a lot of the work that we do involves community engagement. We have a significant number of night meetings and project meetings, and we're constantly trying to engage neighborhood residents, and Alexis is critical in making that work. And then the other two positions here I noted were vacant, and we're hoping to fill those.
Madam Director, you mentioned grants and stuff. Do you have a grant writer in your department?
No, we don't. We just all pitch in.
Oh, so you haven't identified a grant writer, or have you ever had a grant writer position or someone?
No, not a specific position. You'll notice on that line item at the top, Associate Director of Special Projects, Martina Haggerty is in that role, and she's very, very good at competitive grant writing. So I would say that Martina takes the lead on most of those applications. And we have a good track record of attracting federal and state funds.
I don't know if you provided it, but, because we're having a glitch with the, additional deliverables. To date, like how many for the past fiscal year, I guess, or the past couple years, what are the projects that, let's say for this term, I guess, the projects that your department has spearheaded and, accomplished, and then what are they working on for the next, what's their future project plan?
Yeah,
Do you have
sure.
a laundry list like that?
Yeah, I believe that your committee was provided with a copy of our annual operations report, and that
Yeah.
report. I'm sorry.
I think the problem we have is that we weren't able to get it to the full committee, so.
That went out a lot
Did
earlier.
it go? Is this the full, is this it? No, I don't think that's it. That's not it. That's not it.
Is that planning development?
Yeah, but I don't think this is, excuse me one second, folks.
Yeah, sure.
This is just the 3-box report. No. No, I'm sure, I think we have to get it submitted. I don't think, and then none of the committee members have it, but can you give us quickly, give us a little overview, because we actually have it in front of us. And then we'll just make sure that, I'll have the Mr. Clerk or Madam Clerk just reconnect with you folks and make sure you get to the committee members and council members. So can you give us a little, give us a sense of where you are, like, just a little overview of it, all right?
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of the projects that are funded that we are leading, that was where you wanted to focus? Okay.
Yeah, like,
so,
what projects have you guys done, spearheaded, accomplished to date, and then what are the ones you're working on now for the next couple of years, or next 3 or 4 years? What is the long-term
how much
plan,
time
right?
do we have? This is a long one. Okay.
Well, give us a quick one so we can get a sense of flavor, and then we'll get the report submitted, all right?
Okay, sure. No, I'm happy to just give you a quick snapshot. So,
Here's an opportunity for your department to shine.
Great. Thank you for the
How's that sound?
opportunity.
Right?
I love it. So, for current projects, you'll note that downtown, and then we've talked about this in previous years, that we were successful at getting a $13 million HUD, a USDOT grant from a few years ago. That is now currently under implementation with RIPTA. So the city and RIPTA were the joint applicants for that, and that's the downtown transit connector. You'll see that under construction downtown if you're on Dorrance Street or Dyer Street in the downtown corridor near Wexford, that area, and you wonder what is all the construction happening through this corridor. That's the implementation of the downtown transit connector, which is again the kind of fulfillment of a long-term project that we've been working on with RIPTA, which creates.
That's the new bus stops they're building?
Yeah.
The new bus stops you're seeing they're building, and they're putting LED screens in it and stuff, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. And
are they putting electrified pads there too for electric buses? Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that. As you know, they have an addition of an electric fleet, and they are trying to focus that in the areas where we have a lot of density and congestion to help with air quality. So it's not a dedicated electric line, but that's the intent, is to utilize those vehicles on the line. And what I think is going to be really attractive about it is it's a 5-minute. It's every 5 minutes, the bus is coming from Providence Station down to the 195 in Wexford area. You don't need a schedule. You don't need to, figure it out. You just stand there and it's going to come by, and it directly connects. All of those stations have the information about Amtrak and the commuter rail. So if you're at Wexford at the bus stop, it'll tell you exactly when the Amtrak schedules are coming to try to align these things. So that's finally, it's really great to see that under construction. So the other project I think is really worth noting is the Woonasquatucket River Greenway project. This has been in the works for some time. We have our final public meeting next week, I believe, to kind of reveal the final design, and we will be in construction early in the new year. So this is about a $7 million project funded in part through state TIP funds. And we've been working closely with business owners, stakeholders, and the council president in this area. It's basically from the mall to Eagle Square. And it's really rethinking that whole area about how we can highlight the river and make that area much more attractive for folks that are walking, biking. And we've done that in conjunction with business owners. So we've taken into account all the turning radiuses and everything that are going to be required to make this work. But it's an exciting project and a big investment. We just completed a Smith Hill planning study. So with Councilwoman Kerwin's partnership, we just concluded a Smith Hill planning study. We just had the final public meeting last week and have wrapped up that project. And it was just a great success. And we're hoping to launch that soon for North Main Street in collaboration with Councilwoman LaFortune. I know she has a lot of ideas about North Main Street. So we're hoping to do a similar study along North Main Street in the upcoming fiscal year. You've all heard quite a bit about the City Walk project, which is a project that connects India Point Park to Roger Williams Park through the I-195 area and then along Broad Street. That project is going to be, the phase 1 has already started. We're going to be on Broad Street under construction this summer. Really, really exciting to see all of these projects coming to fruition. We have a grant with Rhode Island DEM to implement part of the shared use path. You all will remember recently there was a big ribbon cutting for Gotham Greens down on the corner of Atwells Avenue and Harris Avenue. Behind Gotham Greens is a segment of the greenway that was missing. We just got a grant to continue that segment behind Gotham Greens, and the PRA and the planning department have been working collaboratively on that. And then there are about 8 CIP funded projects that we manage through our department. I don't tend to walk through each of those, but just so you all know, we have some of the CIP projects are run through our department. And then we have just a number of other projects. I'll hit a couple of highlights. One is we received a grant from Rhode Island Housing to redevelop a vacant, blighted, abandoned property on Broad Street, right at the entrance to Roger Williams Park. This property had been burned out and vacant for over a decade. And we received a grant and we are building a new gateway to Roger Williams Park. Chairman, you may have been briefed on this multiple times in wearing your other hat. But we're really excited to see this come together. We had a design competition and had multiple teams from all over the place expressed interest in this. And so we are going to be breaking ground on that this summer. I just had a chance.
Director, you mentioned about housing and stuff like that. I know, wasn't in part of the CDBG, there's like money put aside. So I forget what the housing program was.
Yep, every home.
Is your department running that program?
Yes.
You're managing that program at this time?
Yes.
How is that going? What's the status of that? How much in the account? And what's happening with that program? Because I think there was a pretty good sum of money at one time, wasn't there?
Yeah.
To do
so
yeah. How's the program going on that? First, tell me what the program is, the mission statement of it, and then tell how it's going.
Yep, sure.
Let us know what's.
Yeah, so when the mayor took office, one of the priorities that he had was to address vacant and abandoned properties that were throughout the neighborhoods. At the time, we identified between 600 and 700 vacant properties, which is a staggering amount. But when you see some other cities, what they're facing, it felt like this is doable. We put together a team of multiple departments working on this. So the city solicitor's office, the Department of Inspection and Standards, and other departments. We meet every week and we go through property by property to identify kind of a game plan, if you will, for that particular property. A lot of these properties are vacant and abandoned and have been, I like to say, resistant to redevelopment. Once you dig into that particular property, there's always a reason. It could be a title issue, it could be an environmental problem. But there's, none of these properties are kind of the easy to redevelop properties, right? Those would have been addressed by by the market because it's been a strong market condition over the past several years. So last summer, we actually celebrated the 600th property that was rehabbed through this project. And many of those properties, that doesn't mean that we single-handedly rehabbed 600. It just means that one of the policy tools or funding tools that we had in place helped to push that property along. So for example, DIS implemented a new policy called the transfer affidavit. I think we've maybe talked about this before, but it used to be that you could purchase a vacant and abandoned property and then sell it without having to address the code violations, without having to address what the outstanding issues are with the property. And that's no longer the case. So we have implemented a new policy around that, and that has resulted in 200 plus of these properties getting addressed just through that change. You mentioned
Madam Director, the money that's been put aside for that, I think there's like over $1 million or something like that. It was a big number.
Yep, I was just
has
gonna
any
get
of
to
that money
that.
been used?
Yep,
Okay, great.
so-
I was wanting to know, has that money been, how much is in there and has that money been used and how is it being used? Like what's
Yeah,
happening?
sure.
Is it-
Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe the budget that you're referring to is the every home allocation that's allocated through the CDBG budget each year.
Yeah.
And so we have consistently allocated approximately $300,000 to every home through the CDBG budget. And just having checked all of our numbers recently in the past few weeks, we have about 190,000 that's still available in the every home line item in CDBG to commit. And we have 300,000 allocated in the upcoming budget year. And so what those funds do is they basically fulfill when there's a funding gap for the project. So whether it's a private developer or a nonprofit or CDC or receiver that is developing these vacant and abandoned properties, oftentimes the expense to rehab the property and what you can get for the property when it's all done, there's a gap. And so in those cases, we're able to invest the every home subsidy. It basically functions as a development subsidy to get these properties kind of over the edge so that they can be up and running, paying taxes, housing our families and be part of our neighborhoods. Because there's so many, as you know, so many spillover negative impacts of just having a house that's sitting there vacant. So
do we Madam Director, do we work with Habitat for Humanity at all?
We do. We work.
I have in the past. I've had in the past brought them into my neighborhood several new builds. No,
they aren't as active.
Frankly,
Frankly, they haven't been as active in recent years as they have been in the past. But we have partnerships with all of the CDCs. Emily Friedman, who's the community development director, sits on a lot of these groups where we're actively engaging CDCs about their priorities. So we elicit input from each of them around what are the true problem properties in your neighborhood and how can we get those properties back into productive reuse.
Well, the reason why I bring up Habitat because I don't have one of those CDCs in my neighborhood.
Right.
So what happens is that the neighbors that have it, so then they'll get a monopoly on it. So it was also over there. Meanwhile, the other neighbors that don't have it end up getting neglected because they don't have that advocate. So what I'd like to understand is get a sense of how can we change that dynamic? I don't have a problem with those CDCs, but the problem is other neighbors aren't not getting the attention they need because of someone's going to create a housing corp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
So how can we address that problem?
Well, in many cases, these properties are actually redeveloped by small neighborhood-based developers. So many of the every home properties we've done through the special redevelopment plan in the PRA, we have put properties out to bid. So and hosted meetings where small contractors could meet with small developers and develop kind of a relationship of how to approach these while supporting local contractors. So outside of the CDCs, it's really the small local contractors that are doing the bulk of this work.
So, do you presently have, or the division have, vacant properties could be vacant, like open land properties, or vacant, a building that's abandoned on a property, right? So it could be either
Right.
way, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a,
yeah.
do you have like, it mapped out throughout the city where they are and the concentration?
Yes.
And what kind of vacant property? For example, it took me quite a few years to finally get this house on Kinley Street. It was a legal multifamily.
177 Killingly?
Yeah, exactly. You know that one, right? It took forever because of the title problems, and now it's been raised, and right now they're finishing building a single family, 1-car garage with a nice yard on that street now. And
Yep.
so what happens, we got rid of and we're also making it a little bit less dense, meaning like you're
Yep.
making it more livable in the area.
Mhm.
So, and I mean, that took a lot of work. I mean, a lot of effort. From your department, I know that Sam Budway was on it, working on it, but it was a lot of work on it.
Right.
Is there ways in which we can figure out how to expedite that, or is it always those kinds of challenges? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean,
Anything the council can do, any laws or ordinances we can pass and stuff that we can make that process easier and smoother for those programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to get back to you on that because there may be some ways that we can expedite. I think the challenge is with each of these cases, there's an individual story behind that case. And so it could be that, there's back taxes that are due, there's a sort of clouded title that confuses things, or multiple liens on the property. So yeah, it's not kind of one thing that would help. It's really addressing the situation. It's really putting kind of a whole team together to be able to approach this from multiple perspectives, because, in some cases it involves public safety, DPW, clean and lean type of work, and DIS with, and the law department in housing court. So there's, it's kind of a complicated set of factors. But to your point about mapping it out, we do have, so I got myself sidetracked. We did get about 600 of these properties successfully rehabbed, and we've identified about 245 vacant properties. And when we say vacant properties, we mean structures that are completely vacant. They are kind of officially certified as abandoned properties. So there are about 245 of those in the city right now. And we've mapped those out, and we've mapped out where those are in relation to schools, parks, rec centers, libraries, to kind of start to prioritize kind of the next phase of the Every Home initiative, and really looking at prioritizing those properties that are directly close to our schools, parks, rec centers, libraries, and then kind of going out from there. We also want to prioritize areas where there's been a lot of investment, and really kind of helping to just get these last properties up and running. So I am very confident that we will be able to do that in the coming fiscal year or two.
That's great. And will you be able to, can you provide for the committee and the council members just the latest where all these properties are, like on a map and some the addresses? Sure. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I think it would help the council members know like what's happening in their neck of the woods.
Absolutely.
Great. Questions by committee members? Internal auditor, any questions?
No, sir.
So I guess can we go to, I guess you explained the associate director of special projects and how that works. Then we got the director of community development. And can you talk to me about, you mentioned inspectors. Can you tell me about what that whole division does?
Yeah. So under the director of community development, there's a series of programs. Most of those programs are HUD funded. So as you know, the city receives formula funds that are based on population statistics, and we receive those funds annually. and then develop a proposed budget with the collaboration of the mayor's office and administration, and then work collaboratively with the city council to approve that budget just around this time each year. So we currently have about 175 active projects in that division, with another 66 new projects that are being approved through this budget. And as I mentioned previously, we have, due to the CARES Act and the additional 4.8 million that we're receiving in federal funds, an additional 32 projects that is specific to COVID relief efforts. So it is a division that has a significant amount of work. And as I mentioned, even more so in the upcoming fiscal year. But specific to the housing inspectors, you'll see here on the organizational chart that we have housing inspectors as well as lead inspectors. So the housing inspectors, we run a program that's called the Home Repair Program, run through CDBG funds. Those funds go to homeowners, low-income homeowners who need to make critical repairs to their homes, basically to stay in their homes. When you think about kind of the continuum of investments that we make in housing, helping people stay in their homes is one of the sort of most efficient way to spend those dollars, because we want people to be able to maintain the homes that they're in. So many of the clients in the home repair program are elderly clients or, and like I said, low income clients that are looking to replace a boiler or something like that. So the housing officer takes in those applications, screens for eligibility, and helps to walk through the program and how it works. And then the inspector actually goes out and looks at the job that is being proposed and making sure that the contractor is doing the work appropriately and then monitoring that work. The lead and housing inspector, you'll see that we have two different levels. We have been successful at getting competitive lead abatement funds through HUD consistently over the years. We get about 3.5 million or so for each round of these competitive lead grants. And that really supports the lead abatement work that we do citywide. And so those staff members basically manage that program and then go out and actually do the testing. You know, they're actually in homes testing the lead levels and that sort of thing. So that's
Director, on the lead issue, when it first came here way back when, we had like one of the highest percentage of homes that had lead issues. Where are we now? Like, what's been happening with all this work and all this effort? Do we have a age chart showing where we are, where we were, and where we are, and where we're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Is the matrix based on a number of lead houses that have lead in it, or how? I don't know how it's based on. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I don't have the kind of specifics, I guess, in terms of targets for this, but I mean, just based on the fact that we are a historic city and the bulk of our housing stock predates 1940, we're kind of susceptible to having lead in a number of our housing units citywide, and that's true with a lot of older industrial cities in the Northeast and other places. So I think we weren't, out of sync with where we would expect to be given our historic housing stock. But as you know, we've had this lead grant for a number of years, going back quite some time, and so we've been able to
at least 20 years to my knowledge.
It must be. Yeah. So we've successfully.
I'm just wondering how the trend's been going.
Yeah.
How successfully, how we're doing. Where are we? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And then also is children in particular.
Right.
Lead poison. Is it still high in the city? Is it going down? Like, those are the trends.
I can absolutely get. I can get those benchmarks for you, because we have to report on those outcomes when we are submitting for a renewal of those funds. But we have benchmarks that we have to hit with each of the rounds. So we know that we need to successfully remediate X number of units. So over the years, it's just hundreds and hundreds of units that we've been able to do. But I can try to pull some more specifics on kind of those larger metrics about how well this program moves the needle. Yeah,
Well, we want it to be successful, don't get me wrong. I mean,
right.
It's something we want to be successful. I'd like to just get a sense of how successful we are and, you know, how we've been doing in the past, where we are today and where we're going.
Right.
And then, and hopefully, the number of lead cases are going down, not going up in the city.
Yeah.
That's the goal. You know, so I was wondering if that's happening. All right.
Yeah.
If you can get that, get that to the community, it'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So, and then,
do you have any questions about that unit at this time? All right, so Madam Director, can you move to the real estate section? Can you explain a little bit what that does?
yeah.
Your, what
Yes.
happens there?
Yeah, sure. So the real estate division is, as you see here on the organizational chart, we have a director of real estate that's currently vacant. We tragically lost our colleague Barry Sullivan late in 2019. And so it's an impossible seat to fill, as all of you who knew him well, you can never fill that role, but we're going to attempt to bring on somebody that can help lead the work of that division. As you see, it's a small division. We have a senior real estate officer and a clerk. Those folks really support the work of the Providence Redevelopment Agency, as well as some of the other projects and initiatives in the department. But historically, the real estate division has been the division that basically works directly with the PRA and helps to implement projects that the PRA is working on. When we talked before about the Every Home program, the real estate division is very heavily involved in Every Home as well, because as you can imagine, it involves a lot of property research and title searches and all those sorts of initiatives. So that's pretty much the work of that group.
Great. Comments, questions by committee members?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair?
I haven't heard anything about the Great Streets Initiative. I've been anxiously sitting back waiting for you to talk about it. Who manages that initiative?
Sure. So that is one of the projects under the Associate Director of Special Projects.
Tell me about it. How are you doing with it?
It's, as you know, we have successfully been able to allocate $20 million of CIP funds to the Great Streets projects. So we have 8 of those projects under our purview that we're moving forward with. And a number of the other projects that I mentioned, City Walk and the Woonasquatucket River Greenway, support the work of the Great Streets Master Plan, which is really meant to increase mobility and safety citywide. So that project is as we hoped it would be at this point, having just launched it last June. So we've come a long way, having launched it last June, and now have $20 million of projects underway.
You have $20 million of projects underway. Is all of that spent at this point? What has been spent? What's been completed? I'd like just to kind of get a good briefing of what's going on with it.
Yeah, so I can speak to the 8 projects that are under our purview right now that are CIP funded. One of those is the Greater Kennedy Plaza project. In part, that helps to advance the Great Streets Master Plan. We have a series of off-road shared use paths that are happening citywide. The Urban Trail Network improvements. We have a signage contract that is that just came back through the Board of Contract and Supply. We are implementing a citywide signage for the Urban Trail Master Plan, which is part of that Great Streets work. We are working on Upper South Providence and Trinity Square.
So I think you're naming the 8 projects. Is that what you're running through right now, or is the Urban Trail signage part of the Kennedy Plaza project?
No, that's a standalone project.
So could you go point by point? You've got 8 projects. Let's list them. So I listed Kennedy Plaza. What's the second one?
Yep. So I can actually tell you it's CIP numbers 103, 108, 115, 401, 402, 403, 404, 409. Those are the projects that we are overseeing through our department, and many of those advance the Great Streets.
Yes, could you name
work.
them please for me? I don't have the CIP documents in front of me to reference these numbers. Please provide the detail.
Yeah, so CIP 1.03 is a general line item, complete streets citywide. So what that does is those funds help to boost whatever work is happening in DPW. So for example, if DPW is already going out to do paving or going out to do a project already underway, that line item can provide additional support to add pedestrian crosswalks, to add neck downs or curb reduction, that sort of thing. CIP
Does
one.
every street that gets repaved have to be reviewed or evaluated for bike lanes and pedestrian crossings and?
It doesn't have to be reviewed. It doesn't have to be reviewed and evaluated because that review happened through the Great Streets Master Plan. So basically, the Department of Public Works will take the Great Streets Master Plan, see what that street segment has been identified as. And in some cases, those street segments may have been identified for pedestrian improvements, additional signage, etc. So
how were the great streets identified? Who chose the great streets? What was that process? Who chose the streets that were going to be part of the Great Streets Initiative?
So we launched the Great Streets Master Plan in June of last year, and it was after about a 12-month planning initiative. And so it was a year-long planning study that developed that plan. So it was collaborative between DPW for a number of city departments, but also through extensive community outreach.
But there were streets that were worked on prior to June of last year, correct? There were Great Streets Initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, like for example, the City Walk project is something that we've been working on for a number of years. But it just kind of falls into the goals and the sort of policy initiatives that of the Great Streets Master Plan. So it makes sense to kind of have it all under that one umbrella with that. That's kind of why we're working on this urban trail signage, because we're trying to make it easy and simple to understand where this trail system is. So for example, if you just came to Providence from another community, it wouldn't matter to you so much that this particular segment was called City Walk and this particular segment was called the Woonasquatucket River Greenway. What we want is for a simple system for folks to be able to get around easily to identify markers and symbols and that sort of thing. So, so to your point, there are projects that had been underway that kind of got folded under this umbrella, if that makes sense. And so we already talked about the Greater Kennedy Plaza Initiative, off-road shared use path. So we have a line item for that. So where we are able to have off-road paths, we want to be able to do that. There's a line item for that. The Woonasquatucket River Greenway, we already talked about. It is for the most part funded through the state DOT, but there is a portion of the funding, much smaller portion that's coming out of the CIP in that line item. Same for City Walk. It has a heavy investment from state DOT. Part of the design cost was through the CIP, and I believe there's a portion of the construction that comes through the CIP funds.
Is that included in the 20 million?
All of what I'm talking about is yes.
Okay.
And then
how much of that 20 million has already been spent?
I can get you a kind of aging report on the contracts.
Great.
Yep. And then as we mentioned before, Upper South Providence, Trinity Square, some improvements to that area, and then DeSoto Bridge.
Who manages the Great Streets Initiative?
Our project manager is Martina Haggerty, Associate Director of Special Projects.
And what commission works with her on management of these projects?
There isn't a commission.
committee?
There's not really a committee or commission that is charged with that. It's a multi-department initiative, as you know, working with City Hall, with DPW and others. But the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee does sort of play a role, almost sort of as an ancillary role. Any DOT projects and any street, basically any changes that are going to be happening to city streets, just get presented to the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It's just exclusively advisory, unlike some of the other boards and commissions under our purview, but it's an opportunity for the public and for DOT, DPW, and others to weigh in on what the proposal is, whether that proposal is coming from the planning department, from the state DOT, from city DPW. Those projects all go before that single board for public review, and like I said, it's an advisory board.
So it's only how many members of this committee or this board?
I believe there are 7. You have the names there in front of you. We sent that over to you today.
I don't have that. I'm at a loss on that.
Okay, I believe the chairman has that.
Do you have that information in front of you, Mr. Chairman? Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Madam Vice Chair, I think that's part of the package that not everybody received. So I couldn't enter into the record and go through it, that's why.
Okay.
So hopefully, Madam Vice Chair, hopefully tomorrow, we can enter into the record tomorrow.
What is that? What would that be?
Could you just reiterate that, the deliverable, Madam Director, to the clerk so he can reference it? Madam Director? Can you hear me? Oh.
I can find it for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, we had emailed that over today. I apologize.
All right, so.
What is that called?
Oh, can you just give, what's the name of it, Ms. Brito, for the clerk, so he can find it?
I will,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, my computer went out. It went to sleep, so I have to go find the
If he
name of
can
that.
forward that to the clerk again, and then he can get it to all the members.
Okay, I'll send it to Sean, I'll send it right now to the clerk, and that way he'll have it again. It's also on our website, so if you go to our planning section of the website, all our boards and commissions, if you go to each one, the members are listed on our website. So it's right, if you need it tonight, it's right on the computer.
Mr. Chairman, did we ever get an answer to the enabling legislation or the order to create the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee? Did we get that answered? That was a question last night that was posed.
That was part of the information we sent over.
Could you provide oral testimony? What's going on?
Yeah.
Who started it? When did it start?
Yep, we provided all of that.
Madam Director, can you give us an overview, because we don't have it, that's why.
Okay, we have.
Not that you didn't send it, the problem is that we just don't
I'm
have
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry that you aren't able to review that in real time, but I can just summarize by saying that as we discussed last night, it was an executive order that started the what we called BPAC, I believe in 2013. And then there was another executive order that Mayor Elorza issued to continue the work of that committee. And I believe there's a lot more detail that was presented, but that gives you just the overview. I know there was a question about whether Mayor Elorza had in fact sort of reissued that.
We had asked for the solicitor to review it as well.
Yes, Mr. Solicitor, were you able to review that request?
I did not. Bonnie, if you could forward those documents to me or copy
Sure.
at some point so I can review.
Yep,
Thank you, I
happy
appreciate
to.
it.
Yep.
Mr. Solicitor, more importantly, how long? I know the governor's executive orders don't last for years, so just trying to figure out how that plays out on the city level.
I got it.
Okay, and I know there's actually a state, the charter specifically talks about that executive orders the most it could last to. I think it's almost 60, and if you go beyond 60, you need to have a mega majority of council members to support that so it continues. And that
I'll
applies
provide
to
you-
all executive orders. That's per the charter, by the way. I mean, I know we had a disagreement with the other solicitor about the charter and its application, but I think in this case it would still apply.
Okay, I'll get an answer.
And then just one last question for the director, the authority of you're saying that the bicycle commission or committee is an advisory body and that you utilize them as a sounding board for community engagement. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
That's one of the ways that we have public engagement. So all of these are public meetings that are noticed. And again, the officials from DOT, DPW, or planning come to present those projects. So it's really the first time through this group that if you're doing work in the city, for example, through DOT, you have to come through this group and present what you're doing and allow public questions and allow public comments. And so it's been an effective tool to get more information out about those specific projects, but it is advisory.
So there are public meetings?
There are public meetings, yeah, that are noticed, just like
advertised.
So for all of our boards and commissions, we advertise on the Secretary of State's website, and we widely publicize them through all of our channels.
Social media.
Through business associations, neighborhood associations, other groups that we are involved in. Like I said, we have somebody whose job is to be a liaison to neighborhoods and communities. And so we try to get the word out as much as we can through official channels and then through the unofficial channels as well.
And what are the official channels?
So through the Secretary of State's website and posting, I believe, through the clerk's office as well, and through all of the ways that you all post your public meetings, we do the same.
We advertise our public meetings. And I guess that's my question to you. $20 million for great streets, a lot of money. We're borrowing those funds. We want to make sure that they're spent as effectively as possible. There's a lot of people that feel $20 million would be well served in our addressing our infrastructure needs. Particularly, we don't know, we just heard testimony tonight. We do not know what our sewer lines are, the condition of our sewer system. It's kind of a big unknown and a big cost to us. We're spending money paving our streets. I'm concerned that we're paving over bad sewer lines, which will basically waste the pavement dollars that we're spending. I just think that in this time, we should be very, very mindful, careful, and plan out our expenditures, particularly the CIP borrowed dollars, because they're borrowed funds. So those are the things that concern me. And as far as community engagement, I don't think we do enough on this Great Streets Initiative. I've been very vocal on that. We need to do a better job of making sure that everyone understands what's being done so that they can weigh in. The average person isn't going to visit the Secretary of State's website to say, I wonder what the city of Providence is doing this week.
Of course. Couldn't agree more on that.
Yeah, and social media channels, and I certainly know that you're aggressive about that, but they reach a targeted audience.
Agreed.
The general population, the businesses that are on the corridors that are impacted, they're not sitting on social media. When they get home at night, they're worried about caring for their families and putting food on the table and cutting the grass or dealing with their regular life challenges. They're not going on Secretary of State's website. They're not going on social media channels. So I think it's incumbent when we're spending hard-earned taxpayers' dollars that are borrowed, so we're paying twice, we need to make sure that we're doing it right the first time. We're not redoing things. We're not tearing things up and redoing them. And that they are the best indeed expenditure. I've been a proponent for relooking at the CIP. I've spoken with the chairman about that. But I think in this day and age, when we're looking at our budget dollars, we need to really evaluate and look very closely at what we're spending, how we're spending it, and making sure that now we know that COVID-19 is the new normal for us for, I don't know how much longer in time. We really need to rethink some of these decisions that were made pre-COVID-19. But community involvement is extremely important. Community engagement is extremely important. And I'm just, very concerned that $20 million on this Great Streets initiative, we need to make sure that we're not paving and then having to rip up streets. I'd like to see more money spent on our sewer lines and investigating, inspecting them, and understanding what the value of that repair is going to cost us before we start paving over those streets. Thank you.
Yeah. If I'm any question, I'd like to dovetail on it. Madam Director, one of the things that I am concerned about is I have seen some of the, I don't program recall, but it's, I guess, creating those bike lanes in the road and then putting the rubber stoppers and all that kind of stuff and the reflective paddles. And I noticed, I think on the service street in front of the police station, I guess you had it over there, and that's all done, and it looks like it's all been basically destroyed with traffic and stuff. And that doesn't feel like it's worked out, wasn't the best of location or best of planning location, I guess, because it's not working out well. The thing that I am concerned about is, and it's no different than, and I know, I'm not going to revisit the whole Safe Street thing, but it's the same premise, the same idea. And I think about a person who, once again, buys a house, they buy their house, this is their street, this is where they can park their car, this is how it works. And then the city, albeit whether it's a wonderful initiative or it sounds good at different locations, but then says, okay, we're gonna now take the parking away from the front of your house. You're gonna have to figure out how to rework you're putting out your garbage and recycle cans. You're gonna have to rework the snow plowing situation. And also, you have to rework and navigate now a road that you had that was a certain size when you bought into it. Now it's half the size. That's, I think, the part that kind of concerns me. It's kind of like, you go to Europe, there's a reason why the reason why a lot of cars aren't that big in Europe, because the roads were all originally created for pedestrian or horse and buggy and carriage, and now, so they've done the best they can, but on a whole lot of roads in Europe, you don't really you walk. It's still that way because they're not going to remove those buildings and push them back. So right. In that case, they kept them, it's like they kept them pedestrian as is. So it's the same premise. If all of a sudden Europe, in Italy said, you know what, we're going to make all the pedestrian roads in Venice now automobile roads. And now we're going to take away that and do that. It's the same thing. I know it's the same idea of like all of a sudden disrupting. And I think that's the part that I'm concerned about is that sometimes policy sometimes gets ahead of practicality or how it really works for a person now who has to live with this new item in front of them. Okay, it's like anything else. Like someone says, I buy a house with a waterfront, an ocean view. Then all of a sudden, what happens? Someone builds the 50-story, whatever, a 10-story building in front of my house, right? And I don't have a water view. It's the same kind of premise. And I think, and I'm just dovetailing because I think it's important that when that issue, and we talked about, I know what happened in Councilman Vice Chair Ryan's neck of the woods. And it was very disruptive. It didn't matter, clearly it didn't matter how many public hearings, what it worked, but there was a disconnect. And this is my point of view. And someone who's held office, there's nothing worse like when the public thinks if the government is not listening or the government's not saying, you know what, we're going to rethink it. And I'm going to go back, I'm going to throw a little throwback. I remember when the previous administration, Mayor Tavares, shut down the Davy Lopes pool, okay? Shut it down, and put it down, shut it down, and like the whole community's raging, everybody wants it open, and he would not move from that conversation. So then it took the council person in the neighborhood, and initiative, and the full force of the council to join together to reopen Davy Lopes and to provide that service for the neighborhood. And by the way, and I remember, I think, and Mayor Tavares didn't show for the ribbon cutting, because his policy was, I'm not opening, and that's that. And he was so entrenched with his position and unwilling to modify or modulate his place, his position, you know what I mean? And that's something I don't understand, and I think that's part of, sometimes leaders get too kind of caught up with the situation and no longer receive, and they're just so caught up in what they want. They want to be able to say they put on their brochure or some sort. That's an example in my mind that is a really magnified situation. So I think my concern is, I understand there's this big drive to drive automobiles out of the city and have people walk and bike ride. And you know what? If we were a city back in 1920s and 30s and 40s, even the 50s, where literally majority of the population lived in the city, and you literally could walk down to, when you talk about these neighborhoods, like, I think of Pocasset Avenue when I was young. Pocasset Avenue used to have the small hardware store. Used to have all the small convenience stuff and all the stuff that you needed to live. You know, the bakery, the fish store, all those things. That doesn't exist anymore. Now everything is in these big boxes, and you have to go every place else. They used to have a clothing store. All those things, right? That doesn't exist anymore. And I know the idea is like, oh, if we get rid of cars, it'll force that. But the people who bought into those houses, into these neighborhoods, that's what they didn't buy into that. All of a sudden, I'm going to get rid of my car, and this is what I'm going to do. And this is my life. I work in Seekonk, or I work over here, and I need a car. I got to drive. I got to move. With COVID-19, by the way, let me say this, hasn't really helped that public transit cause. In fact, if anything at all, Rhode Islanders who have been traditionally recalcitrant to public transit, in some weird way, have been validated through this process of why they want their own cars. Because people now, even less, do not want to go on public transit, do not want to be in a subway, do not want to be in a room with, the government's done a great job. Stay 6 feet away, don't be next to each other. I got an entire DPW department that closed down for the entire 3 months. Perfect example, right? I mean, so that's, so I think we have to rethink this in a sense that what really works. And I really think it's important that the neighborhoods or the streets that want it, that street's got to really buy into it. And I'm going to give you a personal example. And I'm trying to give these examples to hopefully have you, and by the way, to persuade you to start thinking in a different way, because I think things have changed. I think Vice Chair succinctly said, COVID-19 has changed its dynamic a lot. In which, I remember when I was going to put speed humps on one of my streets, and I literally, before I did it, was like some people wanted it, some people didn't want it. And I had so many community meetings with those people on the street that lived on the street. It was a single-family home street. And we did this whole, this is way back when, before speed humps became fashionable like they are now. Like, we do it, we just put them up, which is great. It was a bigger process back then. And I had numerous neighborhood meetings, and everybody had to sign off on to do it at the time. I mean, that was the matrix I used back, and I hate to say it, a couple of decades ago. Now it's a different matrix. But I think it's the same kind of concept, I think if we're going to disrupt people's, everyday kind of home life, right? And how they're going to function with the city, like I said, the city services, then I think they need to have a bigger say in that conversation. If someone's going to change something in front of your house, I think you need to really have that person buy into whatever program you're doing. That's what I'm saying. That's the most emphatic way I can put it for you, because it does disrupt their lives. It could be an older couple. Now they got to move the garbage cans even further out into the road, and that doesn't work either, because I guess they have a whole problem now with the garbage pickup, right? Because the garbage companies can't go to the sidewalk; they got to go out there. So you got to put in the bike lane, and so it's creating a lot of issues. And I think we need to iron those things out, and then put a better plan together. And then if whatever street wants it, for me, if a street in my neighborhood wants it, everybody wants it, I'm fine. I understand, because my job is to advocate and empower the people that don't have a voice every day, right? You know? So I think it's important that they have to buy into it. It can't be simply like, oh, this is a great policy, I campaigned on, I get all that. That's about political promises. Political promises make sometimes bad policy, which makes bad government. It does, it's a fact, okay? And sometimes we need to kind of rethink it sometimes, and that's what leadership does. So I'm echoing my vice chair's. I think you maybe should just rethink that program a little bit better, deeper, and maybe do a greater, deeper reach out, because even more so, COVID-19, people are more reclusive right now.
Right.
They're even less engaged. So, I mean, you know, like I said before, people don't even know if people lost their jobs. They don't know if they're going to be able to work. If there's going to be anything out there for them in a couple months. I mean, so they're worried about other things. And the last thing I would want, at least in my word, is to make even things more difficult for them in their daily life than it is already. So I would ask if you could kind of maybe slow it down the conversation, maybe rethink it, and then do greater outreach. And for me, if it's coming to my ward, what I'm looking for is that street or whatever has to buy into it. They got to be there. They got to know what's going on. They should know what you're doing, how it's going to be disruptive, what's the pros and cons. And I'll leave it up to the people. So I would ask you to do that. And I think this is a good time to do it anyway. You got some downtime. Nothing's really happening. So I would ask you if you could rethink that process and do greater reach out and really get more deeper into the grassroots of that conversation. This is my way. I don't know, Vice Chair, I don't mean to, I wasn't trying to steal your thunder. I was trying to hopefully support your position, you know?
Thank you. And my position is exactly as yours is. If the community wants it, that's what I said to the mayor. That's what I said to the planning department staff. If my community wants it, I'll be the first person at the front of the line fighting for it. My community doesn't want it, I will be fighting there with them. They've resoundingly rejected the two-way bike lane on Mount Pleasant Ave. They did the same thing on Eaton Street. So that the community has spoken. They need to be, their taxpayers, they need to be honored. So I agree, it needs to be rethought. And it needs to be rethought in the dollars that we're spending on it, because I do think that it is not an essential spending. It's not essential spending. Sewer, paving, sidewalks, those are critical needs that have been, we haven't been able to borrow. We haven't had our bond rating. You know, thanks to the work of Larry Mancini, thanks to the work of Jimmy Lombardi and Gina, we've done wonders with our finances. We've addressed our short-term financing challenges over the past few years. We increased our bond rating. Because we increased our bond rating, it became less costly for us to borrow. Thank God we did that hard work over the years to get us to a point now where we can stand and look this COVID-19 financial challenge head on. But we need to continue to be smart and address our challenges and be realistic with the dollars we're spending. Every single dollar that we have committed to spend needs to be rethought. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take any more of your time. And thank you, Director, for responding to my questions.
Councilwoman Anthony?
I'd just like to say that this program, while I do understand that maybe there are some areas in the city that have not wanted this project in their wards, or maybe the area wasn't right for these projects, I will say there are other areas in the city that really do want this project and really do value the work and the amount of funds that have gone in. So, you know, I think there's many different areas in the city. So maybe it works some better and some than others, but I do think there's a difference of opinion. But I respect my fellow council members' concerns. And I just want to say it's not everywhere in the city.
Can I continue, Mr. Chair?
Vice Chair. Sure,
Thank you, Councilwoman Anthony. And we don't disagree because there is a place for it. And all I'm saying is we need to engage the community, and the community needs to have a say. So I think we're all in agreement in that. Yep. It's a great program. I support bike lanes. I'm a big supporter of bike lanes. I fought for one on my street that I live. It's important. We need to embrace that. But if the community, if the people that live on the street and pay taxes don't want something on their street, they have a say. They have to be heard. They have to be engaged. That's all I'm saying. So actually, Councilwoman, we're in agreement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for taking so much time. I know we have a lot on our plate.
Mr. Chair, this is Councilor Miller. May I say something?
Councilwoman Miller, yes, of course. Do you have the ability to raise your hand on your little thing?
No, I'm on my phone, so I'm not totally.
Oh, sure, Councilwoman Miller.
Thank
Councilwoman
you.
Miller, come on, you have, of course, madam, you have the mic.
Thank you so much. So yes, I think I agree with my colleagues who are speaking about the importance of community input in this process. The only thing I also wanted to add was I do think that some of what's happening with Great Streets are some critical infrastructure. And so I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, on the plans for Broadway, things are happening on Broadway that I have been advocating since joining council and have been hoping for many years before that, in terms of making a street that you can actually cross, right? That is a heavily trafficked street that has a school on either end that is almost unnavigable for pedestrians. There's 2 intersections on that street that cars have actually crashed into buildings more than once, right? So I think I appreciate the conversation that's happened so far, but I do want to just remind us all that it is more than bike lanes, and there are some big critical infrastructure pieces that go along with this program that I am thrilled about. And I know many folks in the neighborhood are. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, once again, we're in agreement here. There are components that are perfectly wonderful. I'm in agreement with my colleagues. We need community engagement, and we need to honor and respect the neighborhoods that we're trying to make these changes in. And if the neighborhoods don't want the changes, it's a waste of our tax dollars, that's all. So there you go. Said it again. Thank you.
I agree. It's getting late in the hour. Any other questions at this time from committee members?
Mr. Chair, other than I'm concerned that my colleagues have not had the opportunity to review the documents that have been talked about. So technically, should we continue this to give us an opportunity to review it? How do you want to handle that?
Mr. Cook, have we been able to forward it to?
Yeah, so we've sent out, and I can send out these 2 documents too that are related. I mean, the one's related to the DPW stormwater, but the other one is the boards and commissions that she was just talking about.
So why don't we do this? He's sending them out. The committee members and council members take a look at them, and then tomorrow we'll enter into the record, and then if anybody had any particular questions, if the director could just come back tomorrow night for a few minutes, if there are any questions. I don't think they may not be, but just is that okay, Madam Director?
I do have an I-195 commission meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. But my deputy director could.
Yeah, could you why don't you check in?
Okay.
Yeah. And this way, if we have any outstanding questions, we can get them answered and go from there. Does that work for the committee members?
That's fair.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Mancini?
Yes, sir.
I haven't heard from you much all night long, so I want to make sure that you had a last opportunity to say something before we sign off tonight.
Been a quiet night, Mr. Chairman, but as you might notice, I never take myself off video or voice.
Thank you. So I think we made a motion to continue all the items anyway for tomorrow, the ones we have for tomorrow, and then we'll pick up the rest. Right?
Second.
So a motion to adjourn by Vice Chair, second by Councilman Anthony. Discussion. I just want to thank everybody, all the department heads and all the city folks that came this evening, Mr. Mancini's team. Thank you for participating. It's an important and a great effort for the people of Providence to know what we're doing and how we're spending their money. Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.